welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we are taking a look at Bayonets and Tomahawks, some GMT games. This is going to be our kind of a first impressions, kind of some initial thoughts on this game. Because we sat down, we played scenario number 1, which plays through 1 year of the game.
1755, yep.
Yes.
Kind of the start.
And there's 4 different scenarios where you can play the full kind of campaign with everything in it as well. Mm-hmm. So once we've done more of that, we'll be able to kind of, I don't know, expand upon what we've experienced with this. Because we've sat down, played this whole thing, start to finish, and learned a lot having done it.
Well, we learned a lot about the mechanics, but we also strategically...
Yes.
What are we trying to do and how, your comment was mistakes were made. I
Yes.
think we both made mistakes. I vacated certain areas. You didn't attack certain areas. We stalemated up here. Yeah, so we learned a lot.
Yes.
And I think that's what our first play really was about, trying to understand the system. And really, I thought the rules were very understandable.
Yes.
Only a few times, some of the dice results and what happens when you roll certain results, I still am not sure I can tell you verbatim.
Yes.
We still have to look at that player aid, but that's okay,
Yes. And we did a lot of combats over the course of the game, but...
We did combats even during the build-up portion of the game, right? Which
Yes.
is allowable. Maybe not
Maybe not
what
as
you should
advisable
do.
as we should. Yes.
But we did because we were trying to learn the system, and I really had a good experience with this, though. And I frankly want to get this back to the table and do 2 or 3.
We'll play more of this, absolutely. So this is a 2-player French and Indian war game. Mm-hmm. So 1755 to 1759 is the period that this game covers. The map itself is a point-to-point movement map. And there's options for kind of some sea moves as well. But the majority of your land forces are going to be moving from point to point through on highways, not traditional, not how we know them, obviously.
Right.
And then there's paths, which are like tracks, which you have, and there's different unit types.
And then coastal roads as well.
Yes.
There's a slight difference there.
Yes. And so there's different units here, and you'll have seen, if you've seen the counters for this game, there's little triangular units, there's square units, and then there's circular units. And the paths, which is a lot of the central part of this board, can only be moved on by light units, and those are kind of regular light units, colonial units, or it's Indian units, which are aligned with one faction or the other, depending, and there's a number of those. So you can also build roads in this game.
Which was fascinating.
Yep.
We both, because we wanted to see how it worked, decided to build several roads. I'm not sure that we used them because we played the short campaign.
Yes.
Those to me are more of a long campaign thing where you're investing in that infrastructure because it takes a while.
Yeah, and you turn that path into a road.
Yes.
And I had a card that said when you take a construction action, you take it twice.
Oh, so it's like you finish it.
I could insta-put a road.
Okay.
Because normally you spend one action and it spends that for the whole turn putting out a construction marker, and then on a subsequent card later on you can finish it and make it a road. But there's ways to do that. But where you put those roads is very important. Mm-hmm. The map is very interestingly laid out, and that's one of the things where I want to play this more to really get to grips with why things are put the way they are.
Yeah.
Some of it's historical, some of it's for game balance purposes.
Yeah.
This guy can reach here and here, but not this part and this part. And down in the south, there's a lot of points, and the tracks are quite small, so it costs a lot of places to go. And which towns can touch which other towns with your light and Indian movements who go out doing raids and things. It's very interesting.
The interesting thing I thought about the crisscrossing network of paths and I'm going to call them roads. I know they're referenced as
they call them highways. But roads.
They're in the middle of the board. Fort Ticonderoga, Montreal, Quebec. There's a pretty good road built where you can get from New York, New Jersey, New England up through those areas and kind of assault both those areas. So it's easier to hold those. You might build a fort. You actually have a fort in Fort Ticonderoga. And, the French can kind of hold that. And then there's also kind of a western offshoot of those highways that allows for the movement of the heavier square units and the cannon. So I don't know that you need a ton of additional roads, but there are some minor connecting points.
But if you can start building some roads from like northern New England up to Quebec, this is a lot of you can't move your regular units through it.
Yeah.
If you can make it one extra path, it makes a big difference.
Well, that's another area that the French have to defend against.
Yeah, it's
the British.
It's another route of threat, and that you could maybe build it going over to Quebec, but also try to join it up to Halifax up in Nova Scotia.
Yep.
You can do a lot of things, and if you can build those roads, then you can swing your units down from Nova Scotia to reinforce if you've been able to secure the peninsulas.
And that's one of the pinch points for the French is they've really only got 2 areas where they can really get units. They don't have much. Everything else in the south is irregular units. So to get your regulars from the north to the south, it's hard.
Yes.
You have to use a naval move, or you have to kind of connect those roads to make it more passable.
Yeah, you kind of join up your 2 separate areas by doing that. So you're incentivized to do that.
Well, and I think, once again, over the long course of a 5-year game, putting in some of those actions into building those roads, I think, is way more
if you're playing the 1
doable.
year scenario, that stuff is less important.
Yeah.
You'll have less of this kind of more strategic overall movement. You're doing more focused things, like I'm going to go try to take Ticonderoga, or I'm trying to secure Oswego and then turn up to Montreal, that kind of thing. You're doing just a shorter game. You're doing less, right?
Yeah.
So that's
you're trying to do quick hitting things that return
Yeah.
points immediately, because there's a victory point that you're trying to get, and over the long game, it's like, oh, I can really work on this and move and build things up. But I do like that system of roads. I think it's very well done. I remember when we laid the board out, it's beautiful. The board is fantastically beautiful.
Very clean.
But I was looking at those roads going, holy mackerel, there's a lot of points.
Yes.
And there's a lot of connecting roads, but most of them are paths. So to really do what you want to do in the short game, that's fine. Long game, you got to build up. The rating is also, I think, very cool.
It's one of the things you want from a French Indian war game, right? So you've got your light units, most of which are Indians, some of which are colonials. Those light units, you can activate them with a light activation. We'll talk about that here in a second.
A triangle.
They can basically move up to 3 spaces, and then they can start raiding areas. And once you raid an area, it gets a marker on it. But then you score points equal to the points that are on the board for that area. And there's a little raid track. If you get to 8 points, you score a victory point. And that little raid cycle... So it's this, you're turning all of your raids into victory points of 8-to-1 ratio, but that makes a big difference over the course of a game as well. And it's sending guys out and raiding them, but in your 9-turn year, you can't raid the same area twice.
No.
So
the raided marker stays.
You're incentivized to raid all along the border.
Yep.
And you'll need to as well, right? You
as the French, you really, I mean, the reality of it is I ended up scoring 2 VP.
I think 2, yeah.
Because I got 8 rating points 2 different times. One, I got a card that allowed me to just gain a couple of raid points.
Yeah.
Which was nice.
Yes.
So the rating is very interesting. It's really, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's easier than, say, a comparable game of Wilderness War. If we remember in Wilderness War, it's like you have to roll a 1. And if you have a leader with that unit, it's a 1 or a 2. And it may have been a 5 or a 6, but
the odds are much smaller in that game.
Yeah, and in this one, I felt like 50% of the time,
you're
going to succeed. Really, for a raid, a bayonet tomahawk symbol.
Yes, a flag.
A flag.
Which is 2.
Or the
triangle.
Explosion with the triangle.
So it's 2 and 3 that you'll actually be successful.
Yeah. So, it incentivized that. I felt like that's something the French should be doing. And frankly, you as the British did it as well. You weren't as successful.
Well, I don't have as many opportunities.
Right. You really just used your one guy up here, and I think you raided twice, gaining 5 raid points.
Yeah, I wasn't able to convert those.
Because you have to get it up to 8.
But in a longer game, I would have. But that's... Yeah. A big part of that stems from the card-driven aspect of this game.
Yeah.
It's...
You can't just do what you want. Your activations come specifically from a hand of cards that you're drawing.
Yeah, and this is not a traditional card-driven game in any stretch of the imagination.
No.
You have a small deck of cards, and you draw one of those cards. And at the beginning, you've got a card as well. So you can either play this one that you just drew, or you can switch it out with the one reserve card that you have. So this is your choice, one of these two.
Yeah.
And the one that you don't pick becomes your reserve card for next time. So you can if you've got a card that you want to keep for later on. So I have one of those that helped with sea movement and landings.
And you ultimately never used it because
Didn't need to, yeah. But like I'm saving that for when I do want to do some naval landings, right? If you want to keep card, you can keep one card, but then you're forced to play the other one.
Yep.
And so you play this, and the card has shapes. I've got a triangle and 2 squares, and one of those squares can be a naval move.
Because it has an anchor symbol on it.
And the triangles and the squares correspond to the units on the map, basically.
Yep.
With a triangle, I can activate a light unit.
Or a stack of light units.
Yes. And with that, I can do a light move, which is move 3 spaces. Or I can do a raid. I can do those things.
And you can't do both. You can't, say a unit has 2 irregular units. You can't raid with both of those units.
Yeah.
You can only raid really with one of them, and then the other unit kind of has to stay behind. Or you can move them all together and move their 3 spaces. Or if it's a double time movement card, you can move 6. That's powerful.
Yes. And so there's nice little modifiers on there, but it's not like, I've got a hand of 7 cards and we're playing them back and forth. Over the course of a year, you will play 9 cards, but you don't know what they are.
They could be, what did we say, 1 to 4 activations is kind of the range?
Yeah, usually the French and the British ones are like 2 to 4. I don't think there's any 1 ones. I haven't seen any. And
now, the Indian ones had some 1s. They had several 2s.
And there was 1 3,
I don't think I ever got the 3. It ultimately ended up being buried.
And so that's one of the parts of this game that's interesting is the British, I've got usually 3 or 4 is what I had on all of mine.
Yeah.
And so I've got 4 things that I can activate. At most, I'm usually getting 1 of the triangle activations, which is why I can't raid as much. I simply don't have as many. Whereas the French player, they draw a French card, and there's an Indian deck, you draw an Indian card. And the Indian ones are only those triangles.
Yeah.
And so if you got 2 of those every turn, that's what the Indians do. They do lots of raids.
Yeah.
So you're doing raid, you're going to pick up lots of BPs there. And then the French regular activations, you're trying to do some of the more normal stuff that the British are doing kind of back and forth.
Well, and those square activation icons can be used to move triangular units. They just don't get their powerful 3 spaces.
Yeah, they don't move as far.
They get 2 spaces.
And they can't ever raid on those either.
So it's there's kind of an and/or element, so there is a lot of flexibility. I also liked that some of the cards had events on them.
Yes.
So it's like you play this event, and then you get your activations.
Yeah, the events always trigger.
Yeah. So you don't have a choice about it.
You meet the criteria, right?
Yeah.
Some of them are like, this doesn't affect anything, so it doesn't do anything. But,
right.
But yeah, it's not, you can't not play them, basically.
Yeah. So in that regard, it's similar to a CDG, traditional CDG, but it's just set up in a different manner.
Yeah, you don't choose event or ops in any way.
Right.
Like the event goes off if it can.
Yeah.
And it's always your ones that do your stuff.
And some of them are really devastating.
Yeah, real bad.
That smallpox event that you
so
gave me blankets soaked in smallpox.
They're very thematic. It was literally like smallpox blankets, I think was the name of the card. And I removed 2 Indian people.
Permanently.
I removed them to losses.
Okay, what was the one that...
You had one that was smallpox epidemic.
Yeah.
After I'd done the blankets.
Yeah.
Which was, you take them out of the losses box and they're permanently moved from the game. Which is...
That was bad.
But like, isn't it thematic though? And how it happened, like, I gave you the blankets.
Yep.
They died and then, were removed from the... And then they like permanently... Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't make that up.
Yeah.
Like, that's the game.
And then some of those events were things like you said, you can take a C move and you don't gain the negative.
Yeah, I can do a land without
amphibious.
the penalty. And I had one that, it was restore a couple guys to full strength as well.
I had some of those. I also had one that allowed a little bit easier to attack a fort.
Yep, I remember that.
I think your bayonet Tomahawk symbol didn't do any hits,
yeah.
Which is nice. That's one less option you had to hit. So the events were cool. I thought they worked well with the activation cards. I enjoyed that, actually. I thought it was a very interesting. You're also fighting over initiative at the bottom.
Yeah.
There's a dice symbol with a number of pips. And sometimes you want to go first.
Sometimes it's very important to go first, yep.
But then sometimes I'm like, I want to let you go first if I want initiative because I want to undo what you just did, particularly near the end of the game when we were nearing the victory check. Or,
and there was one time where I'm like, I need to win initiative because if I don't, my supply lines were incredibly precarious.
Yeah,
down by
or I think I was going to
Osmega,
block you.
So I had to go first so that I could then fill those in, and it was very difficult for you to cut me off in that way. So initiative's important, and like any good game, when you win initiative, you get to choose who goes first. I like that as a mechanic. I think choices are important in game.
Yeah. Well, because there are sometimes, like I said, you want to go first, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
And I like the flexibility of having that.
Player agency and choices in a game always improves gameplay, frankly, as far as I'm concerned.
I think the other thing that I was really impressed with, and we'll probably cover this deeper after our second play, I really enjoyed that battle table. Ultimately, what happens is winner or loser is decided in a battle on a comparative scale.
Yeah, it's on this. There's this battle victory chart, and it's a scale. It goes up to like 10 or 12.
Yeah, which we didn't see any 10s or 12s, but we've seen stacks of guys on Twitter.
Early game, you won't be doing that.
No, late game yes. maybe.
And there's also negative side of it.
Well, when you're attacking a fort, you start out at a negative.
Yes, and if you attack a fort with no artillery, you're even more negative. Yeah, and if you happen to do a sea landing into that attack,
you're with negative again.
So don't be stupid about your attacks.
Yeah,
but basically, you chuck dice against each other, and it's these custom dice that are really nice and they're embossed. And you chuck dice. You start with like your triangle units, your light units, and you roll those together, and then they have a certain number of results and what those do. And then you roll all your square units, and depending on what types of square units you've got, if they're metropolitan or non-metropolitan, then...
Which is a very important distinction.
Yeah, you roll those, and then you apply those results. And then you roll your circle units, which is forts, artillery, and fleets.
Yep.
They shoot all their guns, and you roll those and apply those results. And each of the different units uses the different results and uses the different results differently.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a little bit... we spent a lot of time with those charts, especially in the first couple rounds.
Trying just to remember.
Making sure that, like, this unit rolled this result, and it does this thing.
And it's actually very clear, but you've got to read through that to make sure you get it.
Because then you get... Because you use a different type of unit who got that same result as before, it does a different thing.
Yep.
And so there's some basic rules where it's like a triangle unit can only damage another triangle unit, or a square unit can only damage a square unit.
But a triangle unit, even if there are no square units to damage, if they roll a flag result, it's like they've aided the battle.
Yes.
In a morale sense.
Yeah, or a maneuver.
Yeah,
something that doesn't do losses.
Yep.
And that's one thing I thought
very
was
cool.
Excellent in this game.
So that pendulum, you start out at 0-0, or you might start out at -1-0.
Yeah.
But for each flag you roll, you move up. For each hit you inflict, you move up. And at the end of the battle, you're going to compare, I have 3, you had 2, I was the attacker, I win the battle.
Yes.
If you're tied, the defender wins the battle. And that can really determine what happens because you have to retreat if you lose.
Yes.
So sometimes holding a key spot, holding a fort, holding a key junction.
Make a big difference.
Yeah, I was like begging, please get a flag, get a flag. And when you get it, you're like, yeah.
Because a flag, I didn't do a loss, but
it still counts.
But it helped, but I still did something. I did something in combat abstractly, and it helped me to win the battle.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of stuff is often not represented in war games, where it's like...
It's only losses, normally.
Here's my line troops. I got all these auxiliaries, different things going on. And, in games where it's like hexes with counter, hexes and point to, a lot of that stuff is just not there. Or it's like, they're a strength point and they can take losses. Mm-hmm. But being able to roll something that doesn't affect the combat stacks, but helps you to win a battle, I think is very
neat.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's some theme there
because
that's enjoyable.
Ultimately in a battle, there's more than just how many guys did you wound and kill.
Yes.
It's did you drive them from the field? Did you outflank them,
yes,
causing them
absolutely.
to have to retreat? And this really represents that. And I agree with you. I really liked that. I also really liked about those battle results is when you kill or it's when you kill. So like when you kill a regular.
Specifically when you kill a metropolitan regular.
Right, the one that had the crown symbol on them.
Or your ones.
Right, if you kill one of mine, we go to this War in Europe pool.
Yeah.
And it's a pool of chits, and you draw one randomly, and they represent victory points.
Potential victory
points. Because ultimately you're going to total them all up.
Yeah, at the end of the year, I look at all my counters, and I count them up, and I compare them to yours, and the difference between those two is how many victory points the person with the most scores.
Yeah. So that was a random element that I really liked.
But you only get those from killing metropolitan regulars, and that is not easy to do in this game.
It is very difficult to do.
Which, again, I really like, because when you do it, you get rewarded.
Yeah.
Not only are you most likely going to have won that battle, and probably take some victory points on the board, because that's where you're going to make stands, but you also get this other bonus, right? Mm-hmm. People at home are upset.
Yep.
You get an extra little victory point chip. Yeah. Some of those are zeros.
Yep. There are, I think, 3 zeros out of 10.
Some of them are ones.
Yep.
Some of them are twos.
6 of them are ones, and then 3 twos. So it's never guaranteed.
No.
And it was funny when I got that first one. You're like, "Oh crap, that's really gonna." And I was like, "Yeah, it's a 2. It's gonna hurt."
Yeah.
And I don't think you ever got one. You reduced several of my units.
I was trying to get that guy down there.
Just couldn't roll.
I just could not finish him off.
So I really like that. That felt like an added element that, once again, brought a thematic component to the game, that war in Europe. Because this is a grander part of the global conflict against France versus England. And I really liked that. So that combat system, the dice, matching of the symbols, the different results and the possibilities for the morale or the flag hits.
Yep.
And then that pendulum of a battle, very well done. I think Mark Rodriguez did a great job putting this together. I also think this is an approachable game because of that.
Yeah, it's not... so there's... What do they say on the back? They said the complexity is a 3 out of 10.
And I would agree from a playability standpoint. I think the strategic standpoint, that's going to be more like a 6 or a 7.
I might push it up to a 4 or 5, only because there's some little there's like the combat stuff. Mm-hmm. It's not I just compare I count up my numbers, you count up your numbers, and we roll a die. Who's got the most? It's not that.
It's not that.
So there's layers and there's steps to all these different bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Who can move where? There's some bits and pieces to remember and things like that. So that, it's enjoyable, but it is the play aid is
it's
a bifold, and it's double-sided.
It's covered.
It's good, but there's still a lot of stuff. There's still a lot of stuff to remember.
And it was funny because I always feel like the hallmark of a good play aid is if I really can understand the concept from here and really don't even have to go back to the rules. I think there are so many important and deep concepts, we had trouble with that. That doesn't mean it's not a good play aid.
However, almost everything is indexed and referenced in the rules. Thank goodness.
Right here it says, you rolled a non-eliminated fleet, 13.9.2. Bam, we could find it really quick. So to me, that is really the hallmark of a good play aid. Can I find what I need to find quickly? And frankly, once we got it down, we were able to follow it with the play aid. So I think they did a good job on that. There's a lot of information on this.
Yeah, it's packed. And we here at the Player's Aid love a good Player's Aid.
Well,
and this is
absolutely we do. It's a very good one.
Yeah, it does what it's supposed to do. You kind of go through everything. It's got a sequence of play, what you do in your action round, and then it's got everything's broken down to the details with the movement of the battles, and then there's a little end of round sequence, and then there's some winter quarters stuff where it's at the end of the year you do kind of all your units going home, all the stuff that you're kind of familiar with big war games like this, especially in this period as well.
The winter quarter step is also very detailed and involves a lot of different elements. We'll maybe cover that more in our full review, but you've got to understand that because certain things are going to happen, and if you're not ready for that, you're going to pay the price.
Yeah, that's one of the things where when you set up and play, make sure you've read that first.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that for almost every game.
Coin games are the same way.
Coin games,
Yeah.
even like Here I Stand.
Yeah.
Where, like, you're like, oh, I'm going to push out and do all this cool stuff.
No, you're not. You're
Guess
coming
what?
all the way back.
After you do a victory check, everyone's got to go home to, like, cities.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, crap. Oh, I wasted all that time moving. So make sure you do read that and understand, hey, here's what's going to happen at the end. So I want to make sure that I'm not going to hurt myself or waste actions doing things that get undone by the game rather than my opponent.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Indian units retreat, your colonial militia, they disband. I mean, you got to be prepared for that. And I think that, to me, is also a very interesting part of this game. The final comment I have on this is I think Mark did a lot of this design himself on the graphic art side.
Oh, did he?
I think that GMT's art side probably finished it up, but Mark is also, and I know this because I interviewed him, my gosh, it was 4 years ago in 2017.
Yeah, we've been waiting for this for a long time.
This game's been on P500 for 4.5 years, but it's really good looking. The map is beautiful. The components are great. I just think it's really well done. I think this is a French and Indian war game that's going to be near the top of my list. Do you like this or Wilderness War better? That's a hard question.
That's very
But
hard.
people are going to ask that.
But when I'm playing this, I'm very conscious of that game.
Yeah, how it compares.
That was one of our very first war games that we played, and it was such a what am I trying to say? French Indian war games.
Well, they're a bit of a slog.
They're very distinctive, though.
Yeah.
Like, you've got slow-moving European armies
Through the wilderness.
Horrible terrain.
Yep.
Who, when they get there...
it's a crapshoot.
Mostly you're going to bloody each other
Yeah.
and nothing's decisive.
Yeah.
Or it's Indian units running amok, raiding everywhere.
And
right?
the countryside is on fire. And that, to me, I like to see that. But...
and Wilderness War had that.
Yep, absolutely.
This has that.
Yep.
This is... Oh, gosh.
It's hard for me, because I really like Wilderness War. I really, really do.
Wilderness War is very good.
It is very good.
This is also very good. This is also... Oh, I'm not going to... I don't know what I would say is better.
I don't know that...
Functionally, they're very different.
Yeah, they are. Well, the dice system, this combat...
Even the card systems.
Yeah, it's very different. I don't know that you could fully really compare them.
Yeah.
We didn't get into a lot of elements, too. There's a lot of neat things like the militia
Yeah. Well,
there's so many cool things.
We're going to play this again probably next week.
Yeah, we'll definitely get this
or the
out
week
next
after,
week.
and we'll play even more of it, at which point we'll kind of really get into some of the meat and potatoes of the game and show you kind of how this works. But... just for some kind of first thoughts, I had a very fun time playing this. I do like this specific conflict. French-Indian War is always something that's interesting to me.
I don't know that we've ever played a bad French and Indian war game, frankly.
No, I mean, we haven't played that many.
Well,
we've played, what, 3 or 4? I think?
3 or 4. They're all different. They all have their own sense of what's going on and feeling.
But I don't know, the feels that I get from them, where it's like, I've got these fast little units, and I've got these slow, really powerful units, keeping everyone in supply. I enjoy this, theater, this conflict.
Yeah.
And this is a nice iteration of that. The components are off the chain. I will say that.
I had a great time with this one. I enjoyed playing it. I enjoyed learning it.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed the fact that after playing for, what did we take, 3 hours?
Yeah, we played this, like, start to finish learning it. We played about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And it was 1 year, which is 9 turns with a couple of extra little bits.
So I think the comment we had is, I'm not sure this is a short game.
Yeah, if you're going to play all 5 years... probably after if you've played this a couple times and you know it, you can probably get it down to an hour and a half.
What does it say on the box? What does it say on the box?
Sometimes they don't say. So it says 2 hours a year.
Okay, so
yeah,
I would say
they ain't wrong.
Because the other thing that we do a lot.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
that's not normally those things are very
off.
But that's probably accurate.
I think a lot of things that we do when we play, we talk so much.
Yes,
like we ask each other.
We're very slow players.
What are we trying to do here? Because we're trying to learn it.
Yeah. What is the designer trying to model with this aspect of this thing? And plus, I've got my nose in the rules. It's our first time.
Yeah. But you're not going to do that with every play. I think you could get this down to 2 hours per turn, maybe a little quicker.
2 hours a year. You could do, you could do a little bit shorter, depending.
Hour 40, hour.
If you knew what you were doing. Because some turns are very quick, where you're not engaging in combat.
No.
Combat does slow things down. You take a stop, you do a combat.
Yeah. I mean, if you know what you're doing, if you get on it and you roll the dice quick and don't talk about it, I think you can get this done in an hour 40 per year.
Probably.
So you're talking about an 8-hour game.
Yeah,
for a 5-year campaign.
If you do the whole hog. Now they give you 4 scenarios, so you don't have to do that. You really don't. But I think
we definitely want to play, say, a 3 or 4 year scenario, if not the entire game. But
I think those ones where you get the multiple years, so you can start getting into the long term planning and stuff. Yeah. That's where you start to get the most out of any style game, honestly.
Yeah.
Whenever you play like just 1 year, you miss out on all of this other stuff of this kind of trough, and then back into the actions where that storyline is very cool.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm desperate to play more of this.
Well, we will play this next week. I think this is a fantastic game. Man, there's a lot of good games that we've already played this. Atlantic Chase and this were just phenomenal.
Yep.
And then we've played some other ones that we've really enjoyed this year so far.
There's been some good games this year.
It's only May. We've still got probably 30 games to play.
Yeah, it's only May, and we were playing 20 games in like January through March already.
That's the way it always is for us. But anyway, I enjoyed it. Had a great time with this one.
Bayonets and Tomahawks from GMT. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.